Believe it or not, there's a lot of things a driver can do to protect himself or help himself before a crash ever happens. And one of those, Dr. Trammell likes to describe this, have a driver get in this seat in the car and just kick his legs and arms around. And everything he comes in contact with that's sharp, to pad it and make it not sharp. Probably the majority of injuries we see are minor cuts and scrapes and puncture wounds from things in the car that get you during the crash itself. Another thing you can do is to make sure that your seat and the Hans device and the head surround all work together. You don't want to be coming up out of the car, say in a rear impact crash, and have the Hans device get hung up, because that puts a terrible strain on your neck and puts your neck at jeopardy of having a fracture or a bad neck injury. So you want that all to slide easily, so there can't be any depressions or places for the Hans to catch. The seat belts have to fit right. And one of the things that most of the drivers will do is to exhale and then pull the seat belts tight, because they do stretch a little bit, and in a crash they stretch. And you want them to stretch, because if they didn't stretch at all, your internal organs would hit the inside of your rib cage, for example, and you'd have some really bad injuries. So you want them to stretch, but it has to be a controlled thing. You don't want the seat belt loose, because then your body gets thrown over, then it gets a sudden stop against the belts, and again you have internal organ damage as a result. So you want the seat belts to fit comfortably, maybe not so comfortably, a little bit uncomfortably, so that they are tight. And it's important to have the pelvis anchored. These are simple things that you just tidy up and have sort of like housekeeping inside the car before you ever go out, and they go a long way into lessen the likelihood of having any kind of injury. The helmet situation is really very interesting. There's no such thing as a concussion-proof helmet, and there are crashes beyond which a helmet can't be of any value. But you have to have a helmet, obviously. Felipe Massa, when he hit the spring here, had he not had the latest and best helmet, that probably would have been a fatal injury. So it is important that the helmet fits properly. You can't just do small, medium, and large. You don't want to be able to turn the helmet, hold your head straight and turn the helmet back and forth. You want your head and helmet to go in the exact same direction. And it does need to be comfortable, especially in long races, hot races. You don't want something that's going to make you feel uncomfortable and lose your concentration during driving. So there needs to be comfort, it needs to be firm fitted, and it needs to be almost custom fitted for you. And there are ways to do that. The helmet companies all know how to manipulate the inside of the helmet so that it does fit right and is comfortable. We have a helmet standard in motorsports now for kids under 17, and there are two models. There's from 6 to 11 and 12 to 17. That can vary somewhat, but the major helmet companies now make a real kid's helmet or youth helmet. Before, they just took adult helmets and downsized them. Or you'd get a helmet that was a little big so you grow into it. That is not the thing to do. You have to get the kids' helmets, because kids' heads and necks are totally different than adults. The ratio is different. Kids tend to have a longer head and shorter neck than when you're an adult. And so the fit is different, and it's important to get a helmet actually made for young people, especially the little kids. The kids start at go-karts at age 4, 5, or 6, need to have a youth helmet, not a downsized adult helmet. Dr. Trammell and I have told drivers for years, especially on these street courses, where you go into a barrier almost immediately if you lose control. If you see that you're going to crash the barrier, don't try to save the car if it's not savable. Put your hands under your seat belts, because you wouldn't believe how many hand injuries we've seen because of trying to hold on to the wheel and escape the crash. And as soon as you go into the barrier, it jerks the wheel, and we get fractures of the thumb and other parts of the hand and wrist because of the driver trying to save the car or just hanging on, I guess maybe hanging on for dear life. But it's much better to take your hands off the wheel and put them under the seat belt, push your head back into the headrest, and ride the crash out. You're going to be a lot better off. the best thing is to stay in the car. Probably the worst thing, unless the car's on fire and you have the wherewithal to get out of the car. But if you've crashed, you're a little bit dazed, but you're aware of what the situation is, you're much better off staying in the car with your seatbelt on, because you can get hit by another car. And if you're climbing out of the car and then get hit, or if you just get beside the car and you're running across the track and get hit, very likely you're going to get killed. So it's much better, you're much safer to stay in the car until we arrive. All the safety teams are aware of concussions that can occur, and initially you hardly know that anybody's had a concussion, and the symptoms may not come until later. We had an episode with Adrian Fernandez, got out of the car, looked at the car, talked to us, talked to his pit crew, and was getting the backup car ready, and then all of a sudden he realized he just didn't feel right. He came to our medical unit, we tested him, and he'd had a concussion. And so it may not be readily apparent at first, so you don't want to just go jump into another car and go. You want to wait at least a few minutes to an hour and make sure that you have all your wits about you, you feel normal, you don't have a headache. And if any of those things, if you just don't feel right, go see the medical people, because you may have had a concussion.